E aí, rapaziada, beleza? Sejam bem-vindos para mais um vídeo do canal, né? Ou também, se vocês não quiserem ser bem-vindos, não sejam bem-vindos, tá, rapaziada? Só que hoje, novamente, eu trouxe aqui pra reagir com a gente a um vídeo. O meu primo pode falar aí, Yash.
E aí, pessoal, beleza? E é pra ser bem-vindo sim, hein? Eu vou falar pra todo mundo ser bem-vindo.
Isso aí, rapaziada. Bora reagir ao vídeo aqui. What if the other half got snapped in Avengers Infinity War? E se a outra metade fosse blipada em Vingadores Guerra Infinita do canal Missed the Part? Tá, esse vídeo é antigo, tá, rapaziada? De 4 anos atrás. Mas é assim que nós gosta, né, Yash?
É,
Isso aí, então bora lá.
porque os vídeos atuais.
What if?
What if events went differently? What if the other group of heroes had been the ones to be snapped away from Thanos?
Cara, Yash, falou um negócio. Eu acho que eu não ia aguentar se isso acontecesse, porque daí o Rap Hogan ia ser blipado.
Né? Oh, mas talvez seria um negócio mais fácil, né? Porque ia ter o Ring.
É verdade.
Mas também não ia ter Homem de Ferro, né?
Mas tipo, o Hank Pym não conseguiu viajar no tempo com esse negócio lá. Só ia ter mais partícula, só isso.
Só que o Homem de Ferro não estaria. Mas, tipo, o Homem-Aranha é bem inteligente, né?
Ah, para, queria conseguir desenvolver isso.
How would this affect the original MCU timeline as a whole? Find out in today's highly requested fan fiction. Events would be playing out the same like our original MCU timeline. Thanos would be hit by Thor's hammer and he would scream in pain, telling Thor he should have gone for the head, but this time he would snap his fingers and the gauntlet would choose randomly. Thor would be confused and Thanos would teleport away. Captain America would...
Cara, mas se isso acontece com a outra metade, o Thanos também ia virar pó?
Realmente. Faz sentido.
Faz sentido.
would scream, running towards Thor. Thor would ask what is wrong with him, and he would fall on his knees, trying to fight the snap. He would look around asking where Thanos went, and Thor would tell him he's gone. Cap would try getting up, and he would scream Thor's name, and his hammer would fall to the ground, and he would turn into ash. Bucky would see him, and he would run in, trying to save Steve, but Steve would be lying on his back, slowly fading away, and Cap would tell him to find Thanos, and in his final words, he would say he was the new Captain America. Falcon would see this, running to Cap, but he was too late. He was out of time. Bucky and Falcon would see the ashes in the sky, looking around. Black Panther would look around, seeing all of his people slowly fade away, and he would try helping as many of them as he could, but then they would all fade away. He would see the Hulkbuster armor, and he would yell for Bruce, ripping the head off from the Hulkbuster armor, and he would see that it was completely empty. He would walk around to see Black Widow's gear on the ground, and he would look at it. Groot would see Rocket turning into ash, and he would try helping him, but he would dust in front of him. He would put his head down in anger, and Scarlet Witch would see Black Panther, and she would tell him what is happening here, and he didn't know what to do. He would extend his hand, telling her to follow him. They would walk around to see Bucky, Groot, and Falcon. They would regroup to...
Mano, eles iam ter a Wanda e o Pantera Negra ainda. E o Doutor Estranho.
Oh, mas eu não lembro se a Shuri foi lipada ou não. Ela foi.
Foi.
Ah, então eles teriam a Shuri, que tipo pau a pau com a mente do Tony Stark. Então ela conseguiria voltar no tempo.
Mas tem que ver quem... O quê?
Mas se bem que a ideia foi do...
Homem-Formiga.
Do Homem-Formiga. Mas também, tipo...
Mas o Homem-Formiga ia continuar lá, porque ele ia estar no reino quântico e o Hank Pym ia tirar ele de lá.
Não, mas aí ele seria snapado também, né? Não, blipado.
Não, ele, tipo, o filme explicou que ele não foi blipado porque ele tava no reino quântico.
É verdade, né? Mas também, tipo, seria bem mais fácil pegar as joias, não precisaria voltar no tempo. Porque, tipo, o, é, as joias foram reduzidas a átomos, como o Thanos falou. Então, se foram reduzidos a átomo, então eles teriam as partículas fim para eles terem tamanho de átomo para pegar as joias, né?
Sabe demais.
telling them what happened, and Bucky would explain that Thanos did what he needed to do and that Captain America and Thor were turned into ash in front of him. Black Panther would tell the heroes they were going to be sending out a distress signal through Wakanda to see if they could contact Tony Stark. They would all turn around to see War Machine, and he would walk towards them, but he would drop to the ground, turning into ash. Back at Titan, Tony would look at Peter, and Peter would help him up, and he would look at him. Star-Lord would shout, "What is going on?" and Doctor Strange would see Tony start to fade away. Peter would yell at Tony, telling him not to leave, and that he needed him. Tony would fall to the ground, telling Peter it was going to be okay, and then he would fade away into dust. Star-Lord would run in, shouting at Doctor Strange, telling him to bring Tony back, and he would tell him that it's already been done, and that Thanos won and they lost. He would start swearing at Doctor Strange, and they would stop looking at Nebula, and she would turn into dust, screaming. Drax would tell Doctor Strange they needed to find a way off this planet, and Peter would walk towards Doctor Strange demanding answers. He would tell him they needed to go back to Earth to warn the other Avengers. He would think of his Aunt May, and he would fall to the ground. Nick Fury and Maria Hill would be getting into a car crash, and they would hear screaming. They would quickly get out of the truck looking around. They would see in the sky a plane blow up in the air, and they would see a helicopter smash into a building, and it would completely blow up. They would see people running and screaming down the street, and Nick would look
Caraca, o Nick Fury também ia ficar vivo.
into the truck that hit
Não,
him, but
mas
nobody
esse
was
não
there.
é o Nick Fury, né?
Quê?
É o... Esse não é o Nick Fury.
Ah, tá. É, mas é a mesma coisa.
Não, mas também, tipo, teria o Doutor Estranho, né? Que sabe mexer com o tempo, essas coisas, e conhece as joias do tempo, as joias
Sim.
do infinito.
Sim.
There. People would fade out on the street, and Nick Fury would quickly get his pager to call Captain Marvel, but it would be too late. Captain Marvel would be floating in space, dusted. Her costume would fall into a sun, getting incinerated. Hank Pym and Janet would get Scott out of the quantum realm in time before the snap, and he would be teleported back in, telling them that it actually worked. He would talk to Hank about his trip, but he would be interrupted by screaming from the rooftop. Hank would rush running faster to the noise, looking at people, but they were already gone. Hank would tell them what the hell is going on, and he would tell Janet and Scott to pack their things quickly, and they would start packing up all of their equipment. They would move out of the building, looking around to see ash everywhere, and cars smashed into. They would quickly run into the van, but they would be stopped by Nick Fury and Maria Hill. They would tell them that they were coming with them, and Hank would yell at Fury, saying they weren't going anywhere. Nick Fury would explain that the world might be ending soon, and that they were going to be needed. A worldwide message would start repeating, and it would be Black Panther telling everybody to stay inside, and that they were going to need all the superheroes. They would all get into the van, and Nick Fury would go onto his cell phone, and he would try phoning Clint. He knew that he needed to get as many people as possible if they were going to survive. The phone would ring, but there would be no answer. Doctor Strange would tell the other half of the Guardians and Spider-Man that Thanos' snap caused half of life to disappear, but they were somehow spared. He would explain that this wasn't supposed to happen, and it wasn't supposed to go like this. He would say that he looked into the future, telling Star-Lord and Spider-Man that Tony was the one that was supposed to save them, bringing all the stones together.
Caraca! Então os Vingadores dependeram da sorte pra ganhar.
É.
Ou tipo, já era predefinido o quem a joia ia matar?
É. Então não faz sentido esse what if. Acabou o vídeo, pronto, tchau.
But now they had to go with plan B. He knew that all those alternate timelines might not have been real, and he would tell them it's up to us now to bring them all back. He would open a giant portal with his magic, and Spider-Man would tell them that they needed to go back to Earth to the Avengers compound. Nick Fury, Scott Lang, Wasp, Maria Hill, and Hank would meet the remaining heroes like Black Panther and Scarlet Witch at the Avengers compound banding together. Doctor Strange would go through the portal outside of the Avengers compound, and they would see the other heroes. Nick Fury would hear a noise outside, and he would point his gun at them, yelling who they were, but then he would put his gun away after Spider-Man stepped outside of the portal knowing who he was. Fury would yell at them, telling them where Tony Stark was, and Peter would try saying something, but he would be cut off by Doctor Strange. He would tell Nick Fury that there wasn't much time before Thanos makes his next move, and Fury would demand wanting to know who he was, and he would say that he was the Sorcerer Supreme and that he fought alongside Tony, but now he's been dusted. Black Panther would walk outside with Scarlet Witch and Groot. He would see Star-Lord, and Peter Quill would look around seeing Earth once again. He knew it's been too long, but he would see Groot asking him if he was okay. Groot would be sad, and Drax would ask where Rocket was, but he would put his head down, and they knew he was dusted. Nick Fury and Black Panther would tell Doctor Strange to come inside quickly, and he would see Shuri and the rest of the survivors that made it out of Wakanda. Hank Pym and Shuri would be working on a device looking for the Infinity Gauntlet's energy signatures in space to find Thanos. Spider-Man would tell the other heroes that he had to leave, and Doctor Strange would tell him no, and that if he goes looking for his aunt, he won't find anything. And Peter would have a tear in his eye. He would tell them that they were going to be finding Thanos soon, and Doctor Strange would tell Spider-Man that it was going to be okay. Star-Lord would be talking to Bucky and Falcon about the battles they had, and Star-Lord would be trying to make jokes with Bucky, but Bucky would tell him to shut up and he would walk away. Nick Fury would try to explain to Doctor Strange that he called in for one of his friends from years ago, but now she's not answering. Doctor Strange would tell Fury that she must have got caught within the snap, and Fury would tell him this is all they got and this is all they had, and now they're going to get those stones and fight Thanos. Doctor Strange would say to Nick Fury that he was going to be be making the plan on this one and that they had to do it right. Shiri and Hank would tell the heroes that they have located the planet with the energy signature, and Scarlet Witch would have a smile and red eyes. They would say they found the same energy levels as they did in Wakanda, and Doctor Strange would get together with all of the survivors, telling them how they were going to get the gauntlet and bring everybody back. In our timeline, this is happening just hours after the events of Wakanda, and Thanos has not yet destroyed all of the stones, so the other half of the Avengers, they might just have a chance and a shot of bringing everybody back. Doctor Strange and Black Panther would call in for a team huddle, and Doctor Strange would explain the plan, telling them to wait until he has one final talk with Thanos and they will finally ambush him. Shiri would make a nano gauntlet that would be made out of vibranium and very expensive technology. She would tell T'Challa once they get Thanos in a frozen state, he can use his nano gauntlet to absorb the energy from the stones into his own gauntlet. Doctor Strange would explain his plan, telling the heroes what needed to be done and what they were going to do. He would explain to Black Panther he would need all of his strength and tech to absorb the gauntlet with his armor, and he would tell the rest of the team to hurt him badly. Scarlet Witch would have an evil smile, and Doctor Strange would open the portal. Thanos would be at a garden, and he wouldn't yet destroy the rest of the stones. He would be using the stones to create his perfect world, but it would be interrupted by a voice from thin air. The voice would explain to Thanos that he should have been fair with the deal by sparing Stark, and now karma was coming. Thanos would look around yelling, telling Strange to come out, and another voice would come in saying, "You destroyed my perfect world," and he would be confused. Voices would be echoing, getting louder and louder until Thanos would scream using the Power Stone, trying to find where they were coming from. His house would be destroyed, and the garden would be on fire. A portal would open in front of him, but there would be multiple portals. He would look around doing a 360, and he knew that he was being boxed in. Black Panther and Spider-Man would come from the left side, kicking Thanos in the face, and from below, Drax and Groot would uppercut him. On the right, Falcon and Bucky would come in, and Falcon would use his wings, smashing them into Thanos' face. He would scream using the Power Stone, but this is what they wanted. Doctor Strange would come in out of nowhere using magic, and he would use the magic on Thanos' hand. Spider-Man would use his webs, and Black Panther would quickly jump on his left arm, cutting him in the face. Doctor Strange would let a portal open from up top, and it would be Ant-Man and Mantis. They would go into some atomic mode, and Mantis would use her powers, and Thanos didn't even notice them. Doctor Strange would yell at Peter Quill, telling him not this time, and that this is their last chance. And Ant-Man would run off of Thanos' head, running towards his arm. He would turn big, using his hand to rip off the gauntlet, and Thanos would scream in pain, and Black Panther would leap in the air, doing a backflip, and he would grab the gauntlet, draining it from the original gauntlet. Thanos would drop to the ground, defeated. He would crawl up, but Star-Lord would kick him in the face over and over again, yelling at him, telling him to fix all of this. Shiri would tell T'Challa through his mask to snap his fingers and send everybody back. He would be screaming in pain, and the gauntlet would slowly become unstable. Doctor Strange would try using his magic, telling him to do it quickly, and he would try snapping his fingers until a massive shockwave of red would hit everybody. The gauntlet would fall to the ground, and Doctor Strange would try using his powers to create a shield. Scarlet Witch would come up from one of the portals, and she would use her powers screaming at Thanos, and she would kill him, choking him to death in the air. Black Panther would pick up the gauntlet, but Scarlet Witch would use her powers and levitate the gauntlet towards her hands. She would put it on, doing a sadistic laugh, and Doctor Strange...
Que é isso, velho? Ela... Mano, que é isso?
Então. Oh, mas eu não sei se faria sentido essa possibilidade, porque o Thanos, ainda estando com a manopla do infinito, ele logo depois que ele coisou, ele
Não, você tá errado. Os Vingadores, tipo em Vingadores Ultimato, demorou 1 mês pra operação deles lá no negócio do Thanos. Aí,
verdade, né?
e daí eles falaram, ó, ele fez isso com as joias há 1 semana. Então teve um tempinho aí.
Realmente, e com o Doutor Estranho lá ia ser bem mais rápido. Mas mano, eu acabei de pensar, o estalo do Hulk ninguém lembra, né? Todo mundo só lembra do Tony Stark.
Eu lembro do estado do Hulk.
would try stopping it, but it would be too late. Spider-Man would try swinging and trying to use his webs to kick her in the back, but she would dodge the attack and he would fall onto Doctor Strange. Star-Lord would try jumping in time, but it would be too late. The universe would start glitching out and things were starting to change in front of them. She would snap her fingers and everything would reset. And that's going to be what if the other half got snapped in Avengers Endgame. Let me know in the comments down below what other MCU and other fan fictions you would like to see. And if you guys did enjoy this video, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are...
Bom, então é isso aí, rapaziada. Esse foi o vídeo de hoje, espero que vocês tenham gostado. Dá like, se inscreve, eu sei que é chato, mas eu peço do mesmo jeito, tá, rapaziada? O link do vídeo que eu assisti do meu canal secundário do canal do Yash vão estar na descrição. Quer falar alguma coisa, Yash?
Esse vídeo foi mais rápido que o normal, né? Porque fui eu que
Tá bom, então é isso aí, rapaziada. Ninguém quer ouvir o Yash falar, porque aqui está a pelota do meu canal e aqui está um vídeo que o YouTube acha que você vai gostar. Então esse foi o vídeo de hoje, valeu, falou e até a próxima, tchau.